She coughed until her face turned blue.
I think she stopped breathing.
I had a feeling that we were very close to losing her.
Singapore has a well-established National Childhood Immunisation Schedule against 12 vaccine-preventable diseases. It also has a recommended schedule as to when your child should get vaccinated. Even so, there are those who slipped through the cracks. In today's episode, we will introduce two such cases, as well as speak to local celebrity Sharon Ismail, who is a mother of two. But first, let's take a look at the real-life case of Rochelle Sung, a 1-month-old baby who had to fight for her life.
Activate code blue.
Doctor, what's wrong with Rochelle?
What's going on?
Rochelle? Rochelle?
What's happening?
Rochelle?
It was the first-month celebration for baby Rochelle. Her parents, Eric and Chalsa Sung, threw a party and invited their friends and relatives.
We were very happy to show off our new baby to our relatives and friends. They were also very excited to, carry her, play with her.
Mrs. Sung believes it was during this party that baby Rochelle contracted the disease that almost cost her her life.
It was about a couple of days she started coughing. At first, the cough wasn't too severe.
Okay. Mommy's here.
Transmissions can occur when we are in contact with contaminated surfaces or when we are in contact with an infected individual who coughs or sneezes. Infants have a weaker immune system. Because of the fact that they are still young, their immune system is not fully developed yet, so they tend to get infections easier. The second thing is also that they tend not to have completed their immunization schedule, which can protect them against major childhood illnesses. Hence, they are more susceptible to infections.
Things took a turn for the worse when Rochelle's coughing became more frequent and intense.
There was one night in particular where there was like 3-4 a.m. in the morning, so it was quite worrying for us. She coughed until her face turned blue.
Can you clean that? Oh, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah? Oh. Rochelle. Something's wrong.
Hmm?
Rochelle?
Rochelle? I think she stopped breathing. Let's take her to the hospital. Over there. Hey, excuse me, doctor. There's something wrong with our baby.
Follow me. Page on the tan.
At the hospital, the doctors had to admit her for further observations and checks.
Her pediatrician suspected it was pertussis. The only thing we've heard of it before is like whooping cough or 100-day cough.
Pertussis is an infection that's caused by the bacteria called Bordetella pertussis. Typically, when a patient with pertussis actually coughs, they can have bouts of a violent cough followed by an inhalation of breath, which makes a whooping sound, and hence it's also known as the whooping cough. Pertussis is very contagious. Infants less than 1 year old are highly susceptible to these infections and can have complications from it.
During her second night at the hospital, Rochelle's condition took a turn for the worse.
Rochelle?
Doctor, what's wrong with Rochelle?
Rochelle? Activate code blue.
Doctor, what's wrong with her?
What's going on?
Rochelle?
It wasn't normal. The sheer amount of medical staff present at that point of time didn't bode well. You could literally feel the doctors there were quite agitated. As baby cot is quite tiny, so with the amount of medical staff around her, there was really no way we could see what was going on. It was terrifying, to be honest. I think at that point of time, I had a feeling that we were very close to losing her.
Be all right, okay?
Rochelle had episodes where she temporarily stopped breathing in her sleep. The doctors attached her to a breathing machine and she was transferred to the children's intensive care unit for close observation.
All the medical procedures started coming in. They had to induce her into I'm not sure if coma is the right term, but they would sedate her so she was sleeping throughout. As time went on, more and more tubes were going into her. It was heartbreaking to see such a tiny body have so many tubes coming in and out.
Rochelle's condition remained critical. Her attending doctor then decided to try a procedure called an exchange transfusion, hoping it will make her better.
An exchange transfusion is a procedure where we remove the patient's blood gradually and slowly and replace it with a donor's blood. This procedure is done only in severe cases of pertussis, where there is a high number of white blood cells circulating in the body and cause congestion in the lung vessels. When we do exchange transfusion, we aim to decrease the white blood cell level to the extent that we can help with the lung pressures and help with the oxygenation in the baby.
Rochelle remained in intensive care for almost 2 weeks before her condition finally stabilized.
Happiest moment for me was seeing her open her eyes and wondering what's going on. It's pretty hard to describe.
After almost a month in the hospital, Rochelle finally recovered to the relief of her parents. But it left a question in their minds. Could this ordeal have been prevented?
We believe that she probably contracted it at 1 month old. At that point of time, she was simply too young to receive the vaccination.
The pertussis vaccination is included in the National Childhood Immunisation Schedule under DTaP. DTaP stands for diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis. Currently, there's a recommendation for pregnant women to receive immunization against pertussis when they are at their 3rd trimester. This will allow the pregnant women to transfer their pertussis antibodies to the infant, and that can protect the infant against pertussis infection in the early stage of their life.
If everyone around Rochelle had been vaccinated against pertussis, her risk of getting infected would have been greatly reduced. After the break, we find out more about the risks that children face when they are not vaccinated and how a disease of the past seems to have re-emerged. In 2019, UNICEF reported that 19.4 million children are not fully vaccinated. The falling vaccination coverage in many countries has led to the re-emergence of diseases many thought we would never see again. In 2019, outbreaks sent several countries rushing to contain a disease that was thought to have been eliminated. In Singapore, more than 150 cases of measles were reported in 2019. That is more than 4 times the number reported the year before. And now let me share a story with you, the story of Khairul Azmi.
His temperature still very high. Khairul! Oh! Khairul, wake up!
3-year-old Khairul was born overseas where his father, Azmi, was outstationed for the last few years. The family had recently returned to Singapore. Khairul's favorite pastime was playing in the park with his mother. It was suspected that Khairul came into contact with the measles virus during one of these park visits. Unfortunately, this was to escalate into something a lot more serious.
Globally, the number of measles cases has more than doubled, from about 132,000 in 2016 to 360,000 in 2018. Given the highly contagious nature of measles, countries where measles have previously been eradicated remain at risk.
Measles is a highly contagious infection that's caused by the measles virus. It typically causes high fever, cough, runny nose, and red watery eyes. The measles virus is transmitted when an unvaccinated individual is in contact with an infected individual. This virus can be spread via direct contact with the saliva or mucus of the infected individual, or if we are in close contact with any contaminated surfaces. 90% of unvaccinated individuals can get the infection if we are in close contact with an infected individual.
About 2 weeks after coming into contact with the measles virus, Khairul started to feel unwell.
Sayang, how is he?
Still running a fever.
Incubation period, which is defined as the period between the first exposure to the virus to the onset of the symptoms, can be 7 to 14 days for measles virus. The symptoms of measles can be high fever, cough, runny nose, as well as red watery eyes. These symptoms can occur early on in the infectious period. Subsequently, on the third day onwards, the individual can break out in rash.
His temperature is still very high. What are these red spots on his face and neck? Khairul? Khairul!
Khairul?
Oh! Khairul, wake up!
So doctor, what's wrong with our son?
Did he get his measles vaccination?
Do you remember?
No, I don't think so.
Khairul had missed both his measles vaccinations at 12 and 15 months of age.
The measles infection can be prevented via the Mmr Vaccine, which stands for measles, mumps, and rubella. This vaccination is covered in the National Childhood Immunisation Schedule. The child will be required to take the vaccination at 12 months old, as well as the second jab at between 15 to 18 months old. 2 jabs for this vaccination is reported to be 97% effective in preventing measles infection. Children under 5 years old are at risk of getting complications from the infections as reported all around the world. The younger they are, we tend to see more complications with them.
7.
Khairul happened to be one such case where the measles infection led to more serious complications.
I suspect Khairul has developed a brain infection.
What?
Oh no, is it because of the measles?
Okay, so what do we do now?
In order to proceed with the course of treatment, the doctor needed to determine if the brain infection was caused by the measles virus. To do this, the doctor had to perform a lumbar puncture on Khairul.
In cases where there is severe measles infection, the measles virus can replicate in the blood vessel, the bloodstream, and bring this virus into the brain, causing brain infection, which is also termed as meningitis or encephalitis. It is important to vaccinate our children to prevent the occurrences of such preventable diseases and the complications that come with it.
After more than a week in the hospital, Khairul's condition improved.
Khairul is being very active today, huh?
Yeah.
Khairul is doing very well. He can be discharged already.
Oh, that's great news.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Ready to go home? Huh?
Did it go? Yes, okay.
A complication from the measles virus, like in Khairul's case, can be very hard to treat and can lead to life-threatening conditions. The good news is measles can be easily prevented with vaccination. When we come back, we discuss more about vaccinations for children with Dr. Kam Kai Tian from KK Women's and Children's Hospital, as well as speak to local celebrity Sharon Ismail on her experience. Welcome back. There has been a global increase in the number of measles outbreak. This is due to declining vaccination coverage in many countries. This has resulted in an increase in the number of individuals who are not immune, making it easier for the disease to spread. Now in Singapore, the number of measles cases has hit the highest level since 1997, with more than 150 cases reported in 2019. Should we be concerned? To discuss more, I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Kam Kai Tian from the KK Women's and Children's Hospital. I'd also like to welcome Sharon Ismail, who is a mother of two. Sharon, how old are your girls?
My girls are 13 and 10 this year.
So you've heard the statistics about the measles cases. How does that make you feel as a mother?
Well, partly relieved that my girls are already past the age where they had to go through all the series of compulsory vaccinations. But I do wonder what happened recently that caused the increase.
It seems that measles was a long time ago, and yet you are starting to see a rise, not just in Singapore, but also in other parts of the world as well. Dr. Kam, how did the number of measles cases start to climb?
We do observe a climb of measles infection, mainly because of a decline in measles vaccination coverage over the past few years.
Some parents may think that the diseases are a thing of the past or less common today. So why should I still vaccinate my children?
All these diseases, although we do not see as commonly now due to the successful immunization schedule coverage, I would say that we cannot be complacent and neglect the fact that these diseases can come back if our vaccination coverage drops. These diseases in the past used to cause serious infections in thousands of children a year with a lot of repercussions. These diseases can also cause death in some cases.
When we were growing up, we also experienced, the tough kind of love from our parents, those who feel that, well, every child's going to get sick, that's the only way they grow stronger, so no need to go for all these sort of jabs. What is your advice about that?
Build their immunity.
Because we have a very safe vaccination, and these vaccinations can actually protect against major childhood illnesses. All these infections can cause serious complications, can even be life-threatening in some of the young children. Why would you want to risk our children getting the infection naturally and risk getting all the complications that can be associated with the infections?
Right. I think the most important lesson that I've picked up is that the infection is one thing. What you worry about really is the complications that could possibly result from the infection.
Yes, that's right.
I'm sure there are people out there thinking, so what if I get these vaccinations? Are they really 100% effective? What would you say?
I would say that nothing in this world is 100%, but if we have complete our immunization schedule and all the doses that are recommended, an individual can be at least 90% protected against the infection.
Would you say that the benefits of the vaccines far more outweigh the concerns?
Yes, definitely. With the vaccinations that's so safe and having temporary side effects, I would say that vaccinations is definitely a safer option than getting the infection itself. Some of the children after vaccinations can have low-grade temperature. They can also feel soreness around the injection site or even have some generalized soreness sensation. But all these are temporary, and we do not see major side effects from the vaccination. However, if there are concerns from the parents, we do encourage them to see their doctor to discuss all these concerns that they have.
Sharon, what about yourself? I know it's been a while, the girls
Yes,
are quite big now. But when they were younger, were you quite religious about the vaccination schedules and all that?
Yes, I must admit I was. It was quite a few to keep track of, but my husband and I believe that it was something that we should commit to because the peace of mind that we get from the protection that we are giving our kids really far outweighed any of the risks.
Because, we love our children so much, we should make sure that they get their vaccinations in a timely fashion as well.
Doctor, I did hear that some parents are a little worried about getting vaccinations for their children because they think that the vaccinations, the weakened form of this virus that you were talking about, would weaken the child's actual immunity so that when a real disease actually comes, the child's immunity won't be as strong. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all. We know that the vaccination can actually boost the child's immune system against all these infections. Even if we unfortunately get the infection, we will tend to get milder symptoms if we are immunized because our immune system can actually fight against the virus or bacterial infection.
If everyone in the population thinks that I don't need to vaccinate, then the immune level of the entire population will go down. There is something about herd immunity. Can you tell us a bit more?
Herd immunity is actually an indirect form of a protection that we can give to a non-immune individual. If a majority of the population is immunized against an infection, we can slow down the progression and the spread of this disease and hence we can protect the non-immune individual from getting the disease.
Who are the ones who are the most vulnerable members of our society?
That will be the children who are less than 1 year old because they are not suitable to receive the MMR vaccine.
That means that when you do vaccinate your children and yourselves, you're not just protecting your loved ones, you're also protecting the larger community as well. Tell us, how does a vaccine actually work?
A vaccine actually comprises of an agent that resembles a virus or bacteria. When we inject the vaccine to an individual, the individual's immune system will recognize this resembled virus or bacteria, and the immune system will develop substances known as antibodies to protect the individual from the infection. So the next time when an individual who has been immunized comes into contact with the virus or bacteria, his or her own immune system will recognize this and start to create antibodies again to protect the individual from the infection.
Once the vaccinations have been done in childhood, does that mean that for the rest of your life, you do not need the vaccinations anymore?
So some of the vaccinations do not need any booster, but for other vaccinations such as pertussis, we do have booster jabs that we need the child to undergo. In school health, they will ensure that all children have this booster jab.
Right.
Were your girls ever afraid of injections? My kids were terrified.
Well, I think there's a natural dose of fear, I think, in anyone. They went through with it, thankfully. They managed to overcome that. But I'm just wondering, if children don't manage to overcome this fear of injections, are there other alternative ways to administer this booster or injections?
Unfortunately, the vaccination has to be done in the form of an injection.
So no oral alternative?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. I would say to the parents that all kids are afraid of injection. Even some adults are afraid.
Yes.
And I think that's natural. But I think that if we can explain to our children that vaccinations are important and it is to protect them, I think some children can understand.
From what I understand, the Ministry of Health worked together with the Expert Committee of Immunization to come up with the National Childhood Immunization Schedule. Why is it important to follow the schedule?
It is very important to follow the schedule because this program is drawn up based on international data of when our children can receive the vaccination and when is the optimal timing for them to receive it. If we follow the schedule closely, we can allow our children to be protected against all these infections at the earliest possible time.
One question, where do we get these vaccinations?
Is actually very accessible. So you can get vaccinations done in the polyclinics, in the general practitioner or even general pediatric clinics.
For more information, visit the website healthhub.sg/vaccinate to find out more about the National Childhood Immunization Schedule and the recommended list of vaccinations. Wow, we've learned so much about how the National Childhood Immunization Schedule can help to prevent diseases such as pertussis and measles. So here's another reminder for you to get your vaccinations for yourselves as well as your children in a timely manner. On that note, thank you, Dr. Kam, as well as Sharon, for your sharing.
My pleasure.
Join me next week as we find out more about the National Adult Immunization Schedule and we take a deeper look at how vaccine-preventable diseases can threaten adults, especially the elderly.